creeps, it's Cameron again, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. And on this episode of Library Macabre, I have a vintage book review of Deliver Us from Evil by Alan Lee Harris. When I read a vintage horror novel, I am in it for one thing and one thing alone: to be entertained. I'm not looking for beautiful writing or poignancy or characters that are going to stay with me, because vintage horror rarely portrays those qualities. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, don't get me wrong, but what you usually find in these pages is a bonkers, violent story with over-the-top scenes that are meant to keep the reader's jaw on the floor. I like the unpredictable nature of vintage horror for that reason, the feeling of not knowing what to expect. These books are from a different time and have been mostly forgotten, so one can never be certain of what they're stepping into. Which is why it is so shocking when I discover a book like Deliver Us from Evil by Alan Lee Harris. Deliver Us from Evil was originally published by Bantam Books in 1988, but the vintage horror savior, that is Capricorn Literary, came along and just resurrected this book from the grave. They have just released brand new paperback, ebook, and audiobook editions. Capricorn Literary actually sent me an audiobook download in exchange for an honest review. The audiobook is narrated by Jeffrey Lynn Hudgens, and before I say anything else about the story itself, if you're interested in Deliver Us from Evil, I would say that the audiobook is a great way to go. Jeffrey's narration of the book was fantastic, especially in those creepier scenes, of which there are many. Those scenes in particular gave me chills, so definitely check that out. The synopsis on the back of the paperback reads: "The Snake Well, deep in the steamy backwoods of Georgia, is where a terrified 12-year-old girl loses her innocence and her life. It is an act so hideous and bizarre that even the few in the town of Lucerne who know the details keep them as their own tortured secret. 14 years later, an orphan boy, a stranger, arrives in the sleepy town. With his arrival, the final stages of an ancient prophecy are set in motion, as evil stirs once again in the Snake Well, and the town's worst nightmare stalks its quiet nighttime streets. Now, a voice calls from the deepest woods, drifting over bayou and river, rustling through kudzu vines, echoing in crawl spaces, beckoning to an orphan boy and a sheriff's son to save the unsuspecting town from a horrible destiny." Author Alan Lee Harris weaves an epic, chilling tale about small-town life, small-town minds, and learning to find your own place as a growing teenager in a small town. Simply put, if you enjoy coming-of-age horror, this is a must for your TBR. While the novel follows many characters, the main focus is on Larry, who is the sheriff's son, as well as Jamie, who is the orphan boy who has come to Lucerne. Being a quiet child with possible learning disabilities, Jamie is verbally abused by his peers. The locals are really quite mean in their views toward Jamie, and Larry decides that, hey, I might lose my friends if I do this, but I'm going to befriend Jamie. What follows is the most touching friendship between two boys that I have read about in a very, very long time. In fact, I don't think I've ever read a story in which the friendship between two boys was so sincere and heartfelt. I dare you not to get teary-eyed throughout the book, especially toward the end. Aside from the interesting characters and the heartwarming friendship that carries the story along, this book also had some of the creepiest friggin' scenes that just left shivers up and down my spine, which doesn't happen very often at all. This is quiet psychological horror that will get inside your head and play on your fears. For instance, is that really your tiny son whispering at you from the darkness, telling you that it's alright, telling you that it's okay for you to come closer? And what about that old woman you look after? If she was calling you from a dark closet, saying that she was injured and she needed help, Would you help her because it's your job? Or would you run away, knowing deep down that whatever is inside that closet talking to you is not an old woman at all? I honestly don't know how Deliver Us from Evil isn't a modern classic, or at least a little better known amongst horror readers. Do not go into this expecting a pulpy 80s horror story, because that is not what this is. It is very slow burn, it is very literary, but it is also creepy as hell. If you're interested in checking out this book for yourself, don't forget that it is now back in print from Capricorn Literary, so you can get the Kindle edition or the audiobook version. And there is a new paperback edition, but I believe Capricorn Literary just pulled it for the time being to fix some errors, but that should be back up pretty soon. Overall, I really love this, and I hope more people discover it. So, Tony, what did you think? 4.5 pumpkins. I would totally agree with that, Tony. That is a great rating to give this book. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next episode of Library Macabre. Later, creeps.